now that we have a solid idea of what restorative justice is, let's get a better idea of how restorative justice has been used in the past and how it's currently being used in practice. So now that we've discussed some of the fundamentals of restorative justice, let's take a look at what restorative justice looks like in the real world. First, it's important to reiterate that the First Nations people of Canada, the United States, and the Maori of New Zealand are crucial to the origins of what restorative justice looks like. In the late 80s, Howard Zehr's research began to delve into restorative practices and try and form a theoretical approach to bring these restorative practices to countries and communities who were not using them. Zehr's publishing of his book, Changing Lenses, in 1990. It is credited for sparking a paradigmatic shift, causing many organizations to adopt restorative practices as an alternative to traditional law practices. For example, the Center for Justice and Peacebuilding is a graduate program founded in 1994. This is where Zehr began his own foray into the victim-offender conferencing process. Over its first few years, there were 5 common principles that could be identified in the school's teaching processes. Humility among the individuals who are facilitating these open spaces, an openness to personal change among the teachers and facilitators, a long-term commitment to be able to delve into these processes long after the traditional legal system might, community, a standard that was well adopted into later restorative practices later on, citing individuals like Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. when identifying ways to adopt a nonviolent stance. Since its founding in 2008, the Fresno County Community Justice Conference Program has had over 1,500 cases resolved with their use of restorative practices. Notable successes of the program are that within 6 months, the recidivism rates for those who did not go through the program were 22%, and those who did go through the program were at 4%. 6% of the restitution costs were collected by the state when looking at misdemeanor cases for juvenile court, while the Fresno County Community Justice Conference Program collected 74% of the restitution ordered by the state. Lastly, costs of individuals going through the traditional justice system average nearly $10,000, whereas through the CJC program, it cost an average of $1,225.75. Finally, the Center for Restorative Justice and Peacemaking at the University of Minnesota takes a bigger picture when examining how to best use restorative justice to create change. While the school makes efforts to make a victim-offender community approach at the forefront, they also have expanded their efforts to broader areas like race and religion. Take, for example, Bo Bell, who in 1893 was shot and murdered while working in Emmett County, Minnesota. Nearly 50 years later, Bo's grandson was shot in a very similar incident in front of his wife and children. Scholars from the center met with individuals from Emmett County 69 years later to discuss details of the shooting and open a dialogue with community members. In addition, post 9/11, the center also desired to create a greater discussion between Muslim and non-Muslim communities. The center noticed a divide increasing between these communities that were in many ways based on ignorance and misinformation. In response to hate crimes and violence among these communities, the center began using restorative practices to foster a dialogue among those individuals as an effort to create peaceful, informative, and accurate discussions. There are plenty of other examples of how restorative justice is being used globally. I challenge you to find your own example and ask, what makes this program unique from others? Or how might the community surrounding this program change how it works and operates? These questions are key to understanding how restorative justice might change and shift as it increases in its implementation. And I hope these videos have helped show their worth as an alternative to more traditional Western approaches to justice.